you. I'm not as technical as I should be, but thanks. Awesome. Okay, so obviously this is just specifically being done for you guys in the entertainment industry. The information is probably not that much different to everyone else's, but rather than go through all the noise about a lot of the other stuff, which is to do with, like pensioners getting bonuses or apprentices and stuff like that, which is probably not that relevant to you. And I'm imagining that none of you are willing to go out and spend $150,000 on an asset right now to claim an extra tax deduction. So I'm really mainly looking at it from your point of view of what you'll probably be interested in at the moment. I'm from Jigsaw Tax and Advisory. I'm one of the partners at Jigsaw Tax and Advisory. I also have two side hustles that I've got going on. One of them is Tradie Wags, which is a newsletter I do for the partners of tradies to help them manage their businesses better, and it's a website as well, so I do a bit of blogging, and anyone's welcome to check that out and join in. It's not necessarily tradie related, it just seemed to be the way I started it. And then Nicole, who is also on the call, and I do a podcast called Money Honey that we've only just started in the last few months, and a lot of our talking on that is about this at the moment, as opposed to the other stuff that we really wanted to talk about. But you can have a listen to that. It's on Spotify and iTunes. Right, let me just get this to go. Just a disclaimer, because as accountants we always have to do this disclaimer, but this information is just general in nature, and you shouldn't really be relying on it except when you've spoken to your tax advisor. And for my clients, I am actually trying to catch up with each and every one of you and go through this with a trying to work out how it will apply to your circumstances. But if you're not one of my clients and you're watching this later on down the track, please feel free to talk to your own advisor and see what you can get out of them. And if you are struggling with that and you do want to contact us, you can. I'm not doing this to try and get more clients, I promise you, but we are here if you do need a bit of a hand. The other thing is that the information I'm providing is as at today, and it may change in the future. So we already have announced this morning that there's possibly a third stimulus package coming out. So look, again, just bear with me. This is changing rapidly, so every day is different, and let's just get what we know out, and then we can start thinking about what might happen in the future and dealing with that at that time. Okay, so you guys in the entertainment industry, you guys were pretty much the first to be hit because there was an immediate suspension of all the public events, and all of a sudden you guys, as Paul said to me, it's not like our businesses have slowed, they've just stopped instantly. So it was unexpected, there was no time for planning. So I understand that's put a lot of extra pressure on you guys. Possibly there's a little bit of comfort in the fact that now everyone's pretty much in the same boat. You guys are not the only ones out there with no work. If you look at people in the travel industry, people in shops even, they're also going through the same sort of thing. All the pubs and clubs have closed, all the restaurants have closed. So like I said, this information, even though it is tailored to you guys, it's probably relevant to pretty much anyone out there. The other thing is that you guys, it's hard for you to go into some sort of alternate industry because you don't want to go and get a job now and then in a few months' time when everything comes back up and running, that you've got to suddenly change what you're doing again. So, I'm imagining that most of you are going to probably try and ride it out if you can. I also know that some of you, and I'm guessing, Fraser, this might apply to you, you might have actually been selling some services and you might have to actually refund some of them. So I don't know how that works for you guys, and I'm sure that's just putting extra pressure on if you've already got deposits on something and you have to pay it back or whatever the situation is. So I probably don't have the answers to that, but I just know that everyone is trying to support you if they can, but there's probably little that people can do to get you money at the moment. So the way I look at it, there's two things we can do. We can look at how we can make our money last as long as we possibly can, what we have right now, and what benefits can you access. So we're going to start off with the accessing of the benefits first, and then possibly come up with some ideas of how we can make the money that you have already last as long as you can. Okay, on that, I also said it's about survival. This is not about making money. So, you know, I can see people out there in other industries going, oh, great, how can I use this to my advantage? To you guys, it's really just getting through the next 6 months, and hopefully it doesn't go for longer than 6 months. So we're talking about survival, not trying to get rich out of this. And I'm sure all of you appreciate that that's not the situation for you guys. So, right now, the situation of the stimulus package is going to be different depending on whether you're a sole trader or in a partnership, and also, or if you're trading out of a company or a trust. Now, most of my clients trade out of companies, and so we'll be talking about that first, but there are some people there who are sole traders and or partners. Now, I kind of group those together because if you're a sole trader or a partner in a partnership, it's pretty much the same structure and the same benefits available to you. However, the key to getting this stimulus money that's coming from the government is that you need to employ staff. Now, a sole trader may have already employed staff, a partnership may employ staff, but you cannot employ yourself. So just want to clarify that. You can't say, I'm an employee of my own sole trader business. If you're a company or a trust, which I can just talk about companies right now, you will be likely to be an employee of your own company, which means you're going to get access to that cash flow boost. And I guess it comes down to circumstances, but I imagine in most cases you would already have been set up to be an employee of your own company. But you may not have ever said that before, so we might have to do a bit of careful planning about that. So let's start with the cash flow assistance, and I will try and explain that to you. It is extremely complicated, but this is for people who employ staff. So the assistance is available to anyone who has an aggregate turnover of less than $50 million, and I'm imagining that would be the case for most of us here. If you're over $50 million, good luck to you. You probably don't really need this stimulus package. It's also been extended for not-for-profit. So if some of you are out there may be involved in some not-for-profits for potentially different arts groups or whatever, if you guys employ staff, you will also get this. I know I am on a couple of boards for different arts organisations, and we will definitely be looking at getting this to help us get through this as well. The key point is that you do need to employ staff, but I've just quoted on here what it actually says in the explanatory memorandum that went out with the legislation that passed on last Monday night. And it says it sets a low threshold, only requiring a single supply or amount of business income to have been reported to the Commissioner on or before the 12th of March 2020. It can be satisfied if an entity has provided a single activity statement for a month or a quarter since 1 July 2018 or an income tax return in relation to the 2018-19 income year. So basically you have to have somehow reported that you are an active business between July 18 and the 12th of March. I do actually have a couple of clients that we kind of haven't done that yet, but if you're one of our clients, we actually have an extension on lodgements for this year because we're in a bushfire zone, because my practice is in Goulburn, and so as long as we get a tax return lodged in the next couple of weeks, I think you should be right to get access to this concession. What it also says, it doesn't actually say in that you have to have employed someone before the 12th of March. So the original information was that you had to employ someone, but now it just says you have to have actually been in business. So I believe there's going to be an opportunity for some of us to be a little bit creative with our employment and maybe bring some staff on in the January to March quarter and be able to access this. So I'm not, there is a very big warning from the government about, and to us tax agents, that we are not allowed to orchestrate something to access this. But I think that there's probably some scope for us to be a little creative, is the way I will put it. The first now it goes in two parts. There's a first cash flow boost and a second cash flow boost. And so the first cash flow boost was announced in the first stimulus package, and the second cash flow boost was announced in the second stimulus package. I'm going to try and explain it as best I can because it does get confusing, and I'm going to go through a few examples about this. So I'll go over it a couple of times and hopefully it will sink in. So the first cash flow boost is based on how much PAYG withholding you have done between March and June this year. So it is capped at $50,000, but there is a minimum of $10,000. So if you have actually just employed someone at all during that period and report that you have employed someone with a W-1 figure on your business activity statement, regardless of whether you withheld any tax for them at all, you will at a minimum get a $10,000 cash flow boost. Now, what that means is you get a credit to your business activity statement. It doesn't necessarily mean you get money back. So please be aware of that. It's a credit to your business activity statement. If that credit then goes against some of the GST that you might have had to report, it means you'll have less to pay. And if that credit goes into a position where you actually are entitled to a refund, the ATO will refund that money to you. The second cash flow boost, which is between June, or basically July and September, or June and September, is not based at all on whether you've employed anyone in that period. It's based on what you got in the first cash flow boost. So whatever you get in that first one, you'll get that back again in the second one. So for those of you who have employed up until March and then cannot employ going forward, you'll still be entitled to this. Now, the wording said that you have to be active to be able to get this, but my understanding of active means that you are just lodging a business activity statement. I don't think it means you actually have to be working. There hasn't been clarification on that, and on the information that the ATO have put up, it doesn't actually say anything to define active. And in the legislation, it doesn't say that word either. It was only in the Treasury in the Treasury report that it mentioned active. So I think that's going to be a benefit for those of you who are not able to pay yourselves for the next couple of months. So I'll go on to the next slide. Cash flow boost 1. So let's go through this again. We'll go through it a couple of times and then go through the examples. So most of you, I imagine, would lodge your business activity statements on a quarterly basis. So you're going to lodge your first one on in April for the end of March, and then you'll lodge another one in June for the next quarter. Some of you may be lodging on a monthly basis. I'm imagining you probably are not, but just in case there's anyone lodging or watching this who is lodging on a monthly basis, you'll lodge March, April, May, June. Now, on your first business activity statement for March, you're going to report your amount of wages. So you're going to put a W-1 figure and a W-2 figure in there. And based on that, they're going to work out how much your credit is. Now, if you are reporting monthly, the March figure will be 3 times whatever your W-2 figure is, because you've already reported in January and February. So hopefully that makes sense. There is a cap on that of $50,000. So if you go over that with your W-2 figure, you can't get any more of a bonus than that $50,000. The second cash flow boost. So as I just said before, whatever that is in the first cash flow boost, you will get that in the second cash flow boost, exactly the same amount. So at a minimum, it'll be $10,000. At a maximum, it'll be $50,000. And it will be spread equally as a credit over the BASs that you lodge between June and September. So for people who might lodge monthly, they'll get 4 equal payments, so June, July, August, September. And for those who lodge quarterly, it'll be 2 equal payments, June and September. So let's go through some examples, and that might help explain it, and you might be able to put yourself in some of these positions and think about how that might work for you. So the first one is probably the one that's most relevant for most of you guys who are probably there's just the 1 or 2 of you working in your business. So you're a smaller employer and you have maybe 1 or 2 people, you withhold a minimal amount of tax. So let's say that it's about $1,000 per month that you withhold. It may actually be $0, and this will still apply. So on the March BAS, you're going to report your W-1 figure for your gross wages and your W-2 figure of $3,000 for the amount of tax being withheld. You'll get a credit on your March BAS of $10,000 because that $3,000 is less than $10,000, and the minimum that we get back is the $10,000 amount. Now, depending on the amount of GST that you've withheld in that or that you have to pay for that quarter, that $10,000 will come off against that, and it may actually take you into a credit position, in which case you may get a refund for that money. Now, you might already have an existing ATO debt that it's going to try and wipe away first, but if your business activity statement account, which we call the integrated client account, goes into a credit position, you'll actually get that money refunded to you. One thing I just want to stress, if you are going to be getting a credit, can I suggest that you make sure that your banking details with the ATO are up to date, and you might want to check with your tax agent on that, because they'll put that money into your account, and if they've got the wrong account, it's going to be really difficult to get that back. You'll then go and lodge your June BAS. Now, with your June BAS, you probably aren't going to still have any more tax withheld, because I imagine you're not going to be paying anyone any more than what you already have been. So you're still under that $10,000 mark, so you don't get any credit for any PAYG withholding in that June BAS, because you still haven't reached that $10,000 limit. But what you will do is you'll get a credit for $5,000 for the first payment of the second boost. And then when you lodge your September BAS, you'll get another $5,000 payment for the second payment of the second boost. Now, assuming in June, or between April and June, you're not going to do any work, you probably still have some GST credits coming through, and you've probably not paid anyone. You'll probably actually get some physical money back for those two. Example 2. So we're a little bit bigger an employer, but we still lodge on a quarterly basis, and our withholding is $15,000 for the first quarter for March. So we'll get that $15,000 credit in March, and that will just mean that we don't have to pay the W-2 figure. We'll still have to pay the GST figure. We then go and lodge our June BAS, and in our June we haven't paid as many wages because times are tough. So our W-2 figure is no longer $15,000; it's $5,000. So we're going to get a credit for that $5,000 for that quarter. So our total credit for the first boost is $20,000. So we're under the $50,000 threshold. Sweet, we get that whole amount done. We still have to pay our GST, although I imagine our GST by the time we get to June is probably pretty minimal. However, on the June BAS, we now get the first part of the second boost, which is going to be that $20,000 divided by 2. So in the June BAS, we'll actually get a credit for the $5,000 for the W-2 figure and the $10,000 for cash flow boost 2 part 1. And then in September, we'll get another $10,000 credit for cash flow boost part 2, payment 2. I know it's confusing. My suggestion as well is either go back and have a look at these slides later on and see how that applies to you, but also have a look at the Treasury guidance that is, Dee will put a link in on the treasury.gov.au website. There's some information there. And also the ATO is starting to put some information up about this too. Example 3. Okay, so this is someone who's a bit larger and probably won't necessarily apply to too many of you who are just just 1 or 2 people. But so this person employs and holds $15,000 per month, right? So they also report monthly, not quarterly anymore. So in their March BAS, at their W-2 figure, they'll have $15,000 worth of withholding. They'll report that on their BAS, and they'll get a credit for 3 times that amount. So they'll get a credit of $45,000 on that March BAS. On the April and May BAS, they will put in their PAYG withholding, whatever that is, and I'll assume it's going to be more than $5,000. And on the April one, they'll get a credit of $5,000 only because they've already reached that $50,000 cap, and then they'll have to pay whatever is extra over and above that. So when they come to their June, regardless of what they put in their W-2, they're going to get $12,500, which is 1/4 of the $50,000 that they got in the first stimulus package, and they'll continue to get that on their July, August and September BASs. So I think you have to think about your own circumstances and do the numbers and try and work out where you will be. I imagine for most of you who are not actually selling anything now, you'll hopefully get yourself into a position where some money does come back to you. Okay? Now, If you don't qualify for this, then you're going to have to look at some alternatives. So this is mainly for the people who are sole traders and don't employ anyone. And that's going to be the job seeker allowance. And this is a thing that's been all over the news where people have been lining up at Centrelink to try and get access to this. And I hope none of you have had to do that. So it's effectively an extension on what we all know as New Start. And so they've changed the name of New Start to a job seeker payment. And if you qualify for even $1 of the job seeker payment, you will then qualify for the job seeker allowance, which is another $550 each fortnight. Now, I've picked these figures up of what constitutes qualifying from it's called Services Australia now, but what used to be called Centrelink or Department of Human Services. So it does depend on your family circumstances, so just be aware of that. If you're a single person, then if you're earning less than $1,086, you'll qualify for at least $1 of New Start, and then you'll be able to get that, or the job seeker payment, you'll then get the job seeker allowance. If you're in a family, the circumstance is going to be different, but if it's just, partners, it's not, you can both, if you're both earning less than $993 a fortnight, then you'll be able to get it. So check with the website to see what your situation is, to see if you can get this. Now, from the 1st of April, the tests are changing a little bit. So it may be worth your while to hold off until next week to go and actually look into this. I think it's probably going to be a little bit easier. So what they're doing is they're waiving the assets test. So in the past, you used to have to go and tell them what kind of assets you have so they could see if you could liquidate some of those to be able to access the New Start. They also have a waiting period. So, they'd look at what you've got paid out and how much money you've got, and you had to wait a certain time to get it. That's been waived automatically now. And they've also taken away this thing called the mutual obligation requirement. So if you're on New Start, you have to go and try and look for a job, and you have to meet with someone and plan about what you're going to do to get back into the workforce. Obviously, that's not really relevant right now, so they're taking that away. So if you are able to qualify for the full job seeker allowance and the payment and the full job seeker allowance, you'll get about $1,100 per fortnight. Now, I know it's not great, but it's better than nothing. But the other thing that will allow you to do is you'll be able to access other benefits such as rental assistance, the energy supplement, pharmaceutical supplements, etc. So you'll probably find that the benefits are quite a bit better than just that. And obviously this is a short-term thing. It's only around for 6 months. So, we're just wanting to get people fed effectively for the next few months if they can. So I just also, depending on your circumstances, you might want to have a look if there's something else you're entitled to. So if you do have kids, you might be able to get a parenting payment depending on your income levels and what you've got there. So you'll obviously have to speak to Human Services about it. If you're under 22, you actually get what's called a youth allowance job seeker payment. My guess is that under 22, you're probably going to have to be based on what your parents are earning. I just would imagine that. And if you're over pension age, you're actually going to have to apply for the age pension, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult to access this because there'll be a whole bunch of other tests that go with that. So this is really for people who are aged between 22 and 65. As I mentioned before, the criteria is changing a little bit. So from the 1st of April, you will not have to go into the Centrelink to get your customer reference number. So if you've never been on benefits before, which is obviously what's caused the big lineups, most people have never been on benefits before, so they don't have a customer reference number, a CRN, from Human Services. So they've had to go in and identify themselves. From the 1st of April, they're going to be able to do that on the phone using some other verification methods and also online. So it's probably going to make it a lot easier for you to go and apply for this after the 1st of April. They're also making it easy. You don't have to provide an employment certificate, the separation certificate. You don't have to really prove your your status with your relationship status or your rental status. I think you just have to declare what that is rather than actually provide proof of it. So I would suggest, if you can wait, and it's only next Tuesday, I think, so whatever that day is, whenever the 1st of April is, that would be a better day to wait to go and actually apply for this. All right, so then the other thing that you can do, and again, I hope some of you have got some super out there, but if you can actually apply for the early access to superannuation, and the wording in the documents that I'm seeing, a lot of people said that if you've got a company, you won't be able to do this, and I kind of agree to a certain extent, but it does actually state not only sole trader, but in some of the information it's saying if you are if you work for yourself. So I think that there's probably a way to access this, but we probably need to be a little bit creative with how we do that. So, and you might not be able to access this as well as some of that cash flow boost from if you are in a company, but I guess we'll plan that as we go. So the idea is that you have to meet a couple of criteria to be able to access your super early. So one of those criteria, doesn't have to be all of them, it just means one of them. So one of them is that you're either unemployed, that you are eligible for the job seeker allowance, the youth allowance, or the parenting payment, single or partnered, or I'm assuming none of you have farmer household allowances going on, or special benefit. I'm not really sure what that even is, but so if you get one of those, you can access your super early. Or if on or after the 1st of January you were made redundant, your working hours were reduced by 20% or more, or you were a sole trader and your business was suspended, or there was a reduction in your turnover of 20% or more. So in one of the things I read, it didn't just say sole trader, it just said self-employed. So that doesn't, it says sole trader or self-employed, which would make me think that companies might be able to come into that as well. But I can't clarify that just yet. So what that means is if you can do this, you can go online. You have to do it through your MyGov account. You'll be able to access $10,000 of your super before July and $10,000 of your super after July, but before, I think it's the 24th of September. Both of those payments will be tax-free, so you won't have to pay tax on getting that money out of super, whereas normally if you take money out before you reach preservation age, you'll have to pay tax on that. So that's pretty much all there is about that. My only caution with that is right now, the markets, as you know, are crashing big time. So if you're taking money out of your super now, you probably would look at your super account and have a look and see that you may not have as much as you thought you had. I'd probably hold off on this unless you really need it, and possibly wait till maybe, look, I don't know if the markets are going to recover or not, but I just would probably be hesitant on this unless you've got a lot of super, and it probably doesn't make any difference. But for a lot of people, they don't have a huge amount of super, and it could make quite a big dent in what they do have. So that's probably how we get money. But the other thing is, what can we do to save some money? And if any of you have a mortgage or any kind of loans, you need to go straight to your bank and ask if you can put those loans on a payment holiday. The banks will grant you 6 months with no repayments, and if you're having trouble with that, you just need to probably keep asking that question. There's now talk that other lending will also start to follow suit in this, and I believe that's going to be announced in the stimulus package 3 if they're going to do anything. So that will probably be for people who have maybe loans for cars, people who have credit cards, things like that. So definitely ask the question and see what you can get put on hold, because we want to try and keep our money for as long as we possibly can. The government is also offering these unsecured loans to small businesses of up to $250,000, and that they are 3-year loans with no repayments for 6 months. My understanding is that the interest rate on those loans will be 0.25%, but I'm not sure if that is actually fact, but I have been told that. They will commence in April 2020. Now, I know a lot of people have already approached their banks about this, what the banks need to do is they need to look at your loan as they would and still decide whether it's worthwhile lending money to you. They will look at your performance before this crisis happened to see how viable it was, and they'll also be instructed to look through the crisis to make sure that you'll be viable afterwards. I imagine for you guys that shouldn't be too much of a problem. There's no doubt that things will go back to normal at some point in time. So it's maybe worthwhile looking into this. What the other thing a lot of banks will hopefully do is offer a sort of a line of credit facility where you can have that sitting there and you don't have to draw the whole amount down, which means that you then wouldn't have to pay the interest on anything that you haven't drawn down. And probably once things go back to normal, you can just say, right, let's just convert whatever's left there into a loan and let's start repaying that, rather than the full $250,000. So for more information on that, I think Dee's probably going to put a link up to the ABA, the Australian Banking Association website. But I think the most important thing is go to your own bank and ask them straight away. Get straight on to getting a mortgage holiday, and then maybe start seeking what you need to do to apply for this loan. Just quickly, I'll just mention this. So I don't know how many of you were worried about being insolvent, but there are laws out there about insolvency. And if you're a director of a company, technically you're breaching the insolvency laws if you're still trading while you're technically insolvent. And what that means is that you can't pay your bills as and when they're due. Probably right now, a lot of people are feeling quite like they're in that position. So they've given us some relaxed laws for the next 6 months about that, which allows you to continue to trade even if you are feeling like you're insolvent, assuming that things will go back to normal at the end of it. There will be some businesses that go into insolvency, I'm quite sure, but you don't have to feel quite so concerned about that right this minute. They've also made some changes to creditors. So previously, if you owed someone $2,000 and you hadn't paid that, they could take you to court over that. That's been lifted to $20,000, and they've also given you 6 months to respond to any claims, which is effectively pushing that out until after this crisis and giving you a little bit of a break on paying things. Okay, so one other thing I just wanted you to think about is, have you paid any PAYG installments? So if you're a sole trader, or even if you're in a company and your company's been making money, you may have paid some PAYG installment in September BAS and in December BAS. You're probably going to get your March BAS and it's going to have a PAYG installment figure on that as well. First of all, you can definitely make your March one 0. But I would also suggest you have a look at getting your September and December converted to 0 as well, which means any money you have paid on that will be credited back to you. And that could be another way to get a little bit of extra money into your account. So I know I'll be definitely looking at that for all my clients and seeing what I can do. But if you're not one of my clients, have a look at that for yourself, and just think about that, because realistically, it's probably going to stop. I know that's going to apply to your tax for this year, but your tax is going to be a lot less than what it was, and you won't have to pay that tax for another year or so anyway. So why would you hold that with the ATO now if you can have it in your pocket where you can actually be using that to get by day to day? And then look, the ATO are going to go really easy on you. So make payment arrangements on absolutely everything. I wouldn't be paying them anything right now. Just make a payment arrangement. And every time I've spoken to them, they've been extremely helpful and nice to us. So I'm sure you just have to say you're in the entertainment industry and they'll be fine. So what should you be doing? Good question. I guess, first of all, planning and thinking about, so this was kind of written for everyone, not necessarily for you guys, but, can you work from home? I know you probably can't. But is there any way that you can be a little bit creative with what you're doing? And I know you guys are in the creative industry, so sometimes you can start to think about some ways that you may be able to provide some of your services online, depending on what you do. And also, what can you do while you're sitting there doing nothing that can be helpful? And I know before we saw a few people have got some projects going already at home and probably doing some training and things like that. So try and make the best use of your time. And I guess also just looking at what discretionary spending you can cut down on. You know, if you are still a member of a gym and you can't go to it, like, see if you can put that on hold. And is there just other things that you're paying that you just don't need to pay for? And, you know, probably being scrappy, basically, you know, eating from home, not going out. We can't do that anyway. So, you know, how can we save money? I know already in the last few weeks, my budget has definitely looked a bit better because I haven't had to spend as much money. So hopefully that, you know, whether it's forced or not, I'm sure we can all find a way to save a little bit of money somewhere. And then planning. So we don't really know how long this is going to go on for, and we really just need to ride out the storm. So, you know, I think just to understand where you're at and have a bit of understanding of what money might be coming your way might just give you a little bit of security that you might, you know, that you have got a bit of a path to get through the next 6 months. Mental health is extremely important, and I definitely urge you to look after yourselves. So whether it be that you meditate or whatever you do, there is actually, I know I've went online, and I don't know if any of you have been involved in it, but there is a place called entertainmentassist.gov.au, and I had a look on that, and they're going to be writing some webinars on mental health for people in the entertainment industry. So it might be worth having a look at that and joining in on those webinars. And you know, like we at Jigsaw, we have a program that we use called Uprise, and that's available to all of my staff. And they go on there and just do some mindfulness exercises and things like that. And I know it does help a little bit with that whole anxiety. And there's plenty of people, you know, plenty of things online that you can look at to get some help on that. And obviously, if you are struggling, talk to someone and get some help. Don't let it overwhelm you. So that's pretty much the end of my presentation. Here, and I'll be answering some questions in a second. So there's just the ways to contact us. So the Tradie Wags newsletter is on my website, tradiewags.com.au. I also blog there a lot. The Money Honey Media podcast, you can have a listen to that. And on social media, so Jigsaw Tax and Advisory has a page on social media, Tradie Wags has a page on social media, and we have a group called Money Honey Tradie Wags, which you're more than welcome to join in. And that's where we've been doing a few of our webinars, live webinars, and just having people generally chit-chat about anything to do with this sort of thing. It wasn't designed for coronavirus, but it's been very handy to have. And